So there's this little frog sitting there, half in and half out of water. And as she gets close to it, she realizes it is not jumping away. It has this blank look in its eyes, and she tries to get a little bit closer to it, and then she suddenly notices that it starts to sag a little bit, and then it just kind of gradually disappears until there is nothing left but the skin. It just completely dissolved. And then she saw a giant water bug, which is this bug that's about the size of your hand, about 4 inches, that had gotten hold of it. And that's a predator that grabs its prey in the water and makes it where it's like paralyzed, and then it turns all of its organs and everything, even its eyes, into liquid, and then just sucks it dry. And she saw that the water bug just swam away, and she's like, okay, this is awful. That's enough. I'm done. This is one of the scenes that Annie Dillard shows us in her Pulitzer Prize winning book, Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. Also, did you know that ladybugs, they hibernate in these big balls? Sometimes they're as big as like a basketball. And because gardeners like to have ladybugs in their gardens, these ladybug balls are often collected and shipped to garden centers in various places. But you wonder, how do you keep the ladybugs from getting smushed in transit? And what they do is they put pine cones down into the box and nestle that little ball of ladybugs into the box, so that the ladybugs crawl into the pine cones and shelter in there, and that keeps them from getting crushed in transit. Who knew? She talks about praying mantises, and even though we know that the female praying mantis eats the male after mating, she actually gives the blow by blow of how this happens and what it looks like. This book is sprinkled liberally with stories of the natural world that Annie, as she encounters them on her property in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. She spends a year basically, beginning in the wintertime, January actually, where she just goes out and explores and writes. So it reads like her journal. It is, in fact, her journal of what she encounters while she's out and about. And it's important to know that she does not hop in her car and go driving to find these places. These are places, like I said, that are basically in her own backyard. She starts the day with a thermos and maybe a lunch and her snake bite kit and heads out walking. She mentions the proverbial tree in the forest, the one that falls, you know the story. And she says, the answer must be that beauty and grace are performed, whether or not we sense them, but the least we can do is be there to witness them, to try to be there. And although she would be quick to say that it is not all beauty, some of it is ugly, remember the frog? But that is just all a part of life. And believe me, she does not shy away from the ugly. Annie is only in her late 20s when she writes Pilgrim, making her actually one of the youngest Pulitzer Prize winners. And by her own admission, she is somewhat of an oddity. She talks about she is the type of person who would, at a party, go up to a random person and just say, did you know that there are 228 distinct muscles in the head of a caterpillar? And she said the fact is it's not like this would be mindless chatter for her. She actually thought she was going to change the person's life. This is important to her. This book is basically just Annie, the world, and her thoughts. When asked, Eudora Welty referred to this as admirable writing. Her words actually were, she said, that it reveals a sense of wonder that is fearless and unbridled. But then she goes on to say, but honestly, half the time I don't know what she's talking about. And I gotta say, I can relate. There were times that I was reading and I just kind of, my eyes just glazed over. I thought, I don't have any clue what she's saying. But then would keep reading, and after a couple or 3 pages, something would jump out at me that would strike me. I'd go, oh, wait, what was that? And I'd have to go back and reread. One such time that I'm reading, she's talking about her goldfish. And it's one of those times that I'm just kind of, and then I read the words, if you can't see the forest for the trees, then look at the trees. When you've looked at enough trees, then you have seen the forest, and you've got it. And she says, if the world is gratuitous, then the fringe of a goldfish's fin is 1,000,000 times more so. And that caught my attention. So I had to suddenly go back and read, what is it that was so gratuitous or so amazing about her goldfish's fin? But her point is good. That when we stop to observe the details, then we can begin to see the bigger picture. Because after all, the bigger picture is made up of the details. I was unnerved at certain points in the book. Like there's this one part where she's talking about she woke up, she was awake, but her eyes were closed, and I guess to describe it, it was kind of like a vision, and she had this vision of being out in space looking down at the earth, and she was able to look down at the earth through the centuries of all the different animals and all the different people who had lived there, and it was like layers, and she kept looking desperately to find where was her place, where was the period of time that she was here, and she really struggled to find her spot. And I felt kind of a sadness, actually almost a dreadful sadness. Maybe sticks a little close to home right now when she describes the effects of Hurricane Agnes in 1972 and how she watched those swirling floodwaters and the damage that they caused and the lives that were taken as a result of that hurricane and the flooding. And I felt her joy as she watched a goldfinch open up the pod of a thistle to get to the thistle seed, and all that white fluffy stuff came floating around, and it was just all in the air, all the white fluffy stuff, and just the joy she felt at witnessing that. And then the awe that she experienced when one evening she spent with a baby copperhead. No, thank you. I'll pass on that one. But she spent this with the baby copperhead, and she watched it, and she watched as a mosquito came down and landed like on the neck, I guess for lack of a better word, of that copperhead, and she watched how it, began to suck the blood from the copperhead, and she watched this for like 3 minutes before the mosquito finally flew away, and she was just awestruck by that. And I love her reflections as she marvels at the creativity of the Creator. She considers the most bizarre creations, things that I have never even heard of or even imagined. And she says it's almost like God is standing there. I mean, it's so unlike God standing there saying, now, that is just ridiculous. That is going too far. Stop right now. No, it's like God has created everything that could possibly be fathomed. And it's like this craziness and this variety in creation is just, unfathomable, really. And she would say, the meaning in all of this is, it is a privilege to be here at this time in this place. And it's amazing what we can see or experience when we just take the time to pay attention. She actually was able to witness the migration of monarch butterflies, and she didn't even set out to go do that. She was there, and it happened, and she saw it, and it lasted a few days, but yeah, that was pretty amazing. In the end, she recalls that Emerson had a dream in which the world was reduced to the size of an apple, and an angel came and took the world and handed it to Emerson and said, "Here, eat." And Emerson ate the world. So Annie says, you know, we are all eventually going to die, and you cannot take any of this with you. Live life, live it to the fullest. I think her exact words were, life is meant to be spent. Spend life. And I guess on this side, we're thinking, I'm not ready to die. No, you know, I'm not finished with life. But she said and believes that ultimately, when we are in those last minutes of life, that, you know, if we have lived very fully, the words on our lips are not please, please. The words on our lips are thank you.